Hello nerds and welcome to Into the Wild, your favourite wildlife and conservation podcast where we look at all things, well, wildlife and conservation.
This is a podcast of curiosity where we know we don't have all the answers.
Oh, that's my co-host Nadia, by the way.
Hi. But it doesn't really matter because we're here to learn and crucially listen to those who are affected by and closest to the issues that we as conservationists tend to pick over from our comfy living rooms.
So strap yourselves in, open up your luggles, grab a brew and join us as we geek out over nature, share our love for wildlife, rarely take ourselves seriously, all whilst learning. Oh, and we sometimes swear. I'm glad you survived the storm.
Just.
It's
in my hair.
Yeah, I have seen your hair.
No.
I was just about to say, as you said that, it doesn't look much different out of a storm.
Yeah, do you know what, Ryan? It's because I couldn't go out in it because it would have been too unsafe to do so, which was the official guidance which I followed. So, you know...
It sounds like you're saying it like because you're representing an organisation. I didn't go out because the advice said not to.
Representing the citizens of the Isle of Bute. No, we are recording a day late because my electricity went off yesterday. We couldn't record.
Yes.
So, you know...
So we're picking up on the weekend.
Oh, and I've just come back in from a walk and, you know, the beach is strewn with objects, but...
Strewn?
Strewn.
That's the most Scottish word you've said ever.
Is it?
Oh, the beach is strewn.
Strewn. With, you know, seaweed shells all over the place, but also a couple of bits of someone's roof, corrugated iron, and
sorry, not laughing.
no,
That's not
but
funny.
You know, I'm watching like rock pipits and oyster catchers and red shank. They're just there calmly feeding. I'm like, guys, where were you yesterday? Like, where were you yesterday? Where did they hide?
Yeah.
I like robins and things. I think they'll just hunker down under a bush. But where did the oyster catchers go?
I genuinely don't have an answer for you.
I think they must just muscle down in the rocks. And if anyone knows, let me know.
They must do. Yeah, if anyone knows where oyster catchers go in a heavy storm.
But
winds.
it's not a heavy storm. It's a hurricane winds.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to.
You know, it was up to 80 mile an hour
your...
gusts and 100 in some places for the north of Ireland. So
I don't know what this says about Ryan, but I just cannot hear the word gusts. I'm sorry.
You've already...
I just can't.
Because of flatulence?
Yes, I'm sorry. There's just something... Anytime someone says gust, I'm like, that's very funny.
It is very funny. Well, anyway, that's us blowing into your ears this week with Nature News.
Nice segue.
We got a few bits this week, hey?
Yeah, we've got a couple of bits. I'm going to start with some positives because we're going to need it.
Okay.
So, okay, I'm going to read this. I'm getting this. I actually saw this on the Marine Conservation Society's website. Well, actually on their Instagram. But long and short of it, the government have agreed to introduce in England. Pretty much it connects what the whole of the UK are doing. But in England, we'll have a deposit return scheme back, which is huge, and I'm going to tell you why. But first of all, I'm going to tell you what the Chief Director of the Marine Conservation Society, Sandy Luck, had to say. Sandy said, this marks a fantastic win for our seas, with plans already in motion in Scotland and the Welsh Government exploring an ambitious scheme to include reuse. This is a great step towards schemes starting across the UK in October 2027, which still feels a bit far away for something that should be quite easy to bring into motion. But to answer the question of what is a deposit return scheme, many of you might not know, especially if you're, under the age of 20 or maybe 25, you might not have heard of this before. This was something we did have in England, I think back in the 90s or the 80s. This was something that existed and got rid of, and it shouldn't have ever gone anywhere. A lot of places in Europe have this, but basically a deposit return scheme means that you pay a small deposit on top of the price of a drink. When you return the empty drinks container to a collection point, you get that deposit back. Collection points are typically located in supermarkets or other shops. The schemes run with huge levels of success around the world. In Germany, for example, they see return rates of up to 98%.
What?
Litter, I know, it's insane, right? Litter is often seen as worthless. Deposit return schemes give litter a true value, incentivizing people to recycle their own drink containers, as well as encouraging people to pick up litter containers they find. If everyone places more value on their drinks waste, it could make a huge dent in the amount of litter we see on our beaches and other wild spaces. That was taken from the Marine Conservation Society's website, which is in the write-up of this episode. That's good news.
It is good news. It is good news.
It's a simple thing that we should have already been doing. So, I mean, the rest of Europe could look at us and go, really? That's so 35 years
Well,
ago.
the previous government, known as the Conservatives, which called themselves the greenest government ever, they were meant to implement it a long time ago, and they passed that deadline, and it was pushed and it was shoved. Nice to see Labour actually doing something for nature and wildlife and not just delaying things and kicking them down the road. It definitely seems like a positive shift. I mean, you know, I'm going to stay positive. It's a really positive shift. It's going to change culturally how we view waste, which
and at the same time, we always say the changes, especially culturally and attitudes within our cultures, they can't happen overnight. So this is what we're seeing here is action in motion of getting us to further success with that kind of thing. Because talking to my friends in Sweden, they said if you see someone throw something on the floor or even in the bin sometimes without recycling, they're like a bottle or a can, they're like, what are you doing? The culture is like, go and get your money back. Energy. They said it's almost like you're seen as just an odd person doing that. It just doesn't make sense. So hopefully we can start to shift towards that attitude. My next bit of news, if you don't mind me jumping straight in, Nadia.
Oh, fine, you just do it all.
Yeah, this is just Ryan's show. We're going to talk about Trump, okay? We've got to talk about it. So Trump had his inauguration on the 20th. Talking of gusts, on the 20th of January, the week that we're recording this now. So last week, as you listen, and he got into office and has gone absolutely mad with a Sharpie and just signed any document that has come in front of him. He's just gone
cock first into the Oval Office.
He must have used at least 4 or 5 pens at this point. He has signed his signature so much, to the point where I'm like, I'm angry, but I'm low key impressed that the man's got that kind of energy to keep signing because
last time he was in office, he did the same. He came and did loads of executive orders. Is it more this time?
I think he did like 115 in a day, which is huge. He was revoking a lot of things. But anyway, before we get on that, so what I've done is I've prepared a bit of a low-key summary of what's going on, okay? So strap yourself in, nerds, and you, Nadia, because I'm going to give you a bit of a rundown on environmentally what Trump has done, what this means, and how I feel about it, and then we'll chat about it afterwards, all right? Okay. So, okay, strap yourselves in. Here we go. Okay, so firstly, and for the second time, Donald Trump has withdrawn from the Paris Agreement. If you're not sure what the Paris Agreement is, it's basically a huge commitment and an international treaty on climate change signed by 196 countries. He did this in 2016, and now he's done it again. And the main reason why he's done this is because he's a massive prick. He's reopened protected waters for oil and gas drilling to focus on his energy emergency crisis plan to go alongside his slogan, Drill Baby Drill. In addition, he will make it cheaper and easier for companies to extract fossil fuels. And again, the main reason why he's done this is because he's a massive prick. He's put a stop indefinitely to all offshore wind energy permitting, leasing and approvals because he's a prick. He's committing to terminate or reevaluate all policies that support people in getting electric vehicles, including the EV tax credit, because he's a prick. He's going to eliminate all environmental justice-related offices or positions across the whole government. Guess why, Nadia?
Is it because he's a massive prick?
Nailed it. Surprisingly, he's actually agreed to invest $2 billion to help protect 30% of land by 2030. No, wait, sorry, that's absolute bullshit. He's actually cancelled the US's commitment to protect 30 by 30, which is a goal for each country to protect 30% of their land and water by 2030. Trump has done this, of course, because he's a massive prick. Now, these are just some of the things he signed, which have huge impacts to the environment and the global climate crisis. And it's a lot. It feels a lot right now, right? It's raw. It's the beginning. There's going to be a lot of talk around Trump and what he's signing or pledging to do. But it's important to note, Nadia and nerds, that there's systems in place. For example, Biden had invested over $33 billion to renewable energy infrastructure within the United States, which was agreed by Congress. Trump can't just stop that, right? It's not a case of just pulling the plug out. He has to get Congress to agree to stop that, which is not a definite. Plus, many states have already had their money or got their own renewable energy plans for the future underway. So these can and will likely continue. It doesn't mean all is fine, but it doesn't mean Trump can go around switching off light switches of progress at the same time. But I am going to say this to anyone listening that may not lean the same way as Nadia or I, and maybe doesn't believe in global climate change. And I really do hope we have some listeners that think that, because it's good to not just preach to the already gorgeously converted. To those people that think me sat here slagging off Trump is being a bit biased, then you're right? Because I am biased. I hate Trump, and I hate people like him, and I hate his administration. And why? Because I love bees. I love frogs, I love newts, I love beavers, I adore snakes, I adore ducks, I love owls, I love a woodland and its trees, I think meadows and all its wildflowers are incredible, I love clean rivers, I love clean air, I love food, and I enjoy the thought of our species and all others thriving alongside the natural world for years to come. And if that means I'm biased for hating Trump and his prick-serving administration, then I am fine with that. And if anyone listening thinks I'm being too harsh or critical on the man, then again, I will happily say I am biased, and I will flip you 2 middle fingers, tell you to go suck a dick, because in the words of the late great Scottish comedian Jane Godley, Trump is a cunt. Good night.
Woof. What can I add to that?
That's my fault. You talk for a bit. I need to breathe.
You need to calm down. You need to calm down. Yeah, thank you so much for giving us a rundown. I'm totally, utterly aware of what's missing. That obviously this is a nature and conservation podcast, and there is so much more missed off what you said around some of the executive orders around humans and people and what it means for community and oppressed communities, and particularly, so all of it and more. And do you know what I was going through my head as you were saying that? And do you know what, he is a prick. I'm sorry, he is a prick. Like, yeah, you know, there is like, it's our podcast, so we can do what we want. actually, because I was just going to make excuses, because it's really important actually for activists and communicators to remember that deep set ideologies exist within populations. There's a reason why he was voted in. It's not just one baddie. There are some really deeply dark, fascist, oppressive, hateful, spiteful views that exist within the populace, and Trump is a mouthpiece for those. But like, take all of that side, I just think it's okay for, like, as humans, we do need to find someone to be a proxy for our pain, and you couldn't pick a better cunt to just hate every single thing about him.
Hey nerds, sorry to interrupt the show, it's Ryan here. I just wanted to pop on to tell you something quick. We always want Into the Wild to be a free and accessible show, but it does cost to run this thing. So if you ever have any spare pennies or pounds and you want to chuck it towards your favourite nature, wildlife and conservation podcast, then you can do so by going to www.ko-fi.com/intothewildpod. The link is in the write-up of this episode. Anything you're able to give goes straight back into the shows we produce. Anyway, I'll shut up now. Back onto nature news. I know a lot of people are struggling to hold this. A lot of people's anxiety have gone up for very good reason. I know a lot of friends that I've got in the States are, they're not in a good place right now. So it's kind of nice to hear how other people are coping. So we've actually managed to get some words off of a dear friend of yours, Nadia.
Well, I would say friend of the pod.
A friend of the pod. She is indeed. And we thought, let's go and ask someone that knows this feeling very, very well and has served a lot in office and around this kind of news and this kind of events, I guess. It's the former Green Party leader, Caroline Lucas, to give us some words of wisdom, but also how Caroline deals with moments like Trump.
This first week of Trump being back in office has made me feel angry, it's made me feel sad, it's made me depressed. But actually, more than anything, I think it's just made me feel incredibly exhausted as well. I've forgotten that sixth sense of anxiety on waking up each morning wondering what the latest atrocity will be that he's done, whether that is pulling out of the Paris Climate Agreement or just persecuting minorities in ever crueler ways. And I think I find strength in my friends who I know share my feelings, but who also simultaneously redouble their own efforts to fight back. They don't give up, they stay true to their values. And, to know that Trump being awful means the rest of us have to work even harder to do the good stuff. I've been doing a course called Zen and the Art of Saving the Planet. It's about learning to be more mindful, to breathe, to get perspective. It's basically the Plum Village approach of Thich Nhat Hanh, and that helps a lot. I find strength in the arts, people creating beautiful things in the midst of awesomeness, and I find hope in things that people have said about hope. People like Václav Havel, for example, who said that hope is not the conviction that something will turn out well, but the certainty that something is worth doing no matter how it turns out. And again, that kind of hope that the writer Rebecca Solnit describes as being not just like a lottery ticket that you grab hold of sitting on your sofa, but rather the kind of hope that is strong enough to propel you off that sofa, out of the door, and in her words, is an axe to break down doors with in an emergency. And that kind of hope, that kind of really active hope, in spite of all of the forces kind of rushing against us, feels more important than ever. And finally, I guess I find strength in being in nature, in the natural world, in the kind of perspective that gives me as well. So those are kind of my survival mechanisms at the moment, my coping mechanisms. And I think I would just say to people, don't give up. Things change. One of the great sayings from Thich Nhat Hanh is, thanks to impermanence, everything is possible. And sometimes I think we have to hang on to that sense of impermanence and recognise that can actually be a pretty good thing too. Things can change. Things can change really quickly. There are great people in the world doing great things. And yeah, we need to hang on to those very, very tightly.
Oh, isn't that lovely?
Thank you. Yeah, I like what she said about
Caroline.
hope. Or that quote about hope is like rethinking about what that means is just...
The fact of the matter is, this is your takeaway, the fact of the matter is, hope still exists. Mm-hmm. And because it exists, there is magic in the world. And so it's better than the alternative of no hope.
Absolutely, yeah.
Lovely.
Okay, so that's Trump. Again, not much to say other than how we feel about it because it's very new. But I'm sure throughout the rest of 2025 we'll bring you some more updates and stuff like that. But Nadia, what's your bit of news?
Okay, well, this is the news. The government's response this week to a wild justice petition to ban driven grouse shooting.
Ooh.
As you know, hopefully. When we do petitions, when it reaches 10,000, the government has to respond to it. When it reaches 100,000, it has to be debated in Parliament. And so the government has responded to a petition from the wonderful organisation that is Wild Justice. Actually, side note, Mark Avery is stepping down as leading Wild Justice.
Oh,
so, yeah, that's been announced this week. The
a
very
restructure to come.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Mark, for his many years of service to Wild Justice.
Yeah, I know. And come on. Let's go out with a bang for him, not like a
Bad
shotgun.
Pun.
Yeah,
Bad pun.
Well, actually, the petition is still up, so do go on to Wild Justice website and sign the petition to ban driven grouse shooting. They're at 50-something thousand. We need to get it to 100,000 by May, so do that for Mark. But side note, so basically the government has responded, basically saying they have got no plans to ban driven grouse shooting, and actually they want to see, and this is a Labour government. And this is a sport reserved for the aristocracy, the very wealthy. This is a Labour government saying that they've got no plans. I really want to know and understand who is the real mouthpiece to the government supposedly saying that they support really blood sports, which have been kind of, it comes from the echelons, those kind of people. This isn't my Labour. This isn't a government I understand. But just to extrapolate a little bit more for you, if you don't know what driven grouse shooting is, Britain's the only place in the world that does this. There are plenty of countries that do shoot grouse and do things like this, but this idea of this driven grouse shooting, it's basically a hobby. It's killing wildlife for fun. It takes place in the uplands of Britain, in Scotland, Northern England, and some a little bits in Northern Wales and Northern Ireland as well. But basically, loads of rich cunts with nothing better to do who are steeped in a patriarchal society where they realise that their inbred nature or newly gained wealth, they have to there's got to be an outlet for all of that kind of weird testosterone where they're not taught to cry or be vulnerable. They have to go kill things, right? So, you're a big shot investment banker, you're newly millionaire, newly minted. You really want to join the posh tweed wearing folk. So you go shoot with your pals at the weekend. Or you are in a long lineage of posh tweed wearing folk, dark human beings. And you just want to kill things for fun. And so basically you go up with your pals, people go ahead to scare the birds so they fly up in the air, and then you shoot them. We're talking about huge swathes of Britain. Oh, there's a food crisis, there's a housing crisis, there's a climate crisis. What should we use huge chunks of the British landmass for? Or just like a sport for some people, not housing,
for some people,
not carbon sequestration, not biodiversity, not all of these different things, but for shooting for fun. So just some of the reasons why it's stupid. So legally, because of scheduling and Natural England and licenses, people that manage grouse moors can kill foxes and crows and stoats to protect the grouse so that they can be shot.
So they're there for the shot.
But then there is obviously our hen harriers, our golden eagles, our white-tailed eagles, not being able to establish or sustain populations or declining to near extinction. We know that those birds that are found poisoned, shot or disappear are closely linked to grouse moors. Also, the illegal burning of moors, which is, a really special habitat that should be boggy, but it's burnt every year for grouse. So it's just stupid one, stupid one. Anyway, all of this amazing evidence at a climate crisis when, uplands are incredible carbon places to sequester carbon. Obviously, deep peat sequesters tons and tons and tons of carbon. The government has decided to be like, oh yeah, no, we've got no plans to stop a stupid sport.
Okay, well, you need to sign that petition.
News.
If anyone's listening and has not signed that petition, if you are from the UK, then please, that it's in the write-up of this episode, click it, sign it, get it done. Let's get it to 100,000 at least. Get that to government.
Surely that's only 100,000. That's like 10% of our listeners, eh?
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Hey, look, honestly, just literally send it to mom, dad,
Yeah. Say it's for something else if your mum and dad aren't interested.
Just say can you believe blood sports are still happening? But they're not just happening. Even if you just don't like the idea of red-faced men shooting things for fun, it's really bad for the climate. And it's really bad for biodiversity, and even for those reasons, even if you think, shooting fair enough, we've hunted for years.
Okay, so there's your call to action, nerds. You've got to sign a petition to ban this. It's the Wild Justin link in the write up to this.
And also email your MP.
And email it, yeah, absolutely, all those things. Okay, so there's your nature news for week 3, nerds. Lovely to chat to you about some things. Everything we've spoken about has links in the write up of this bio. If you're not following us on social media, you know where to go to. We're not on X anymore because Elon Musk is there, but we are on Instagram and Blue Sky. Search us on there. And if you have anything you would like to give towards Into the Wild to help us keep producing the shows we produce, then kofi.com/Into the Wild pod. Again,
yeah, especially those who've already signed that petition and you're wondering what is your call to action. Give us £3, £4.
There you go, £3, just to help us keep doing what we're doing, guys. That's all we want. But until next week, look after yourselves, stay safe out there, and we'll see you soon.